I mean, we've all had this experience where like you're emailing with someone and suddenly they send you something that like they've clearly thought about and they've taken time to write this. And suddenly you're like, oh, this isn't just a transactional relationship. Like we're developing a real relationship. And at that point, you crave that out of that conversation, right? The same way that, that you learned to crave authenticity and vulnerability. I don't think that it disappears because we're not face to face. And some of my closest friends are with people that I really only talk to on the phone now. But I think that what is key is kind of a humility to say, I'm going to let myself experience the pleasure of connection, even when it's not obvious that it should be occurring. Right? I'm going to go into this Twitter fight. I'm going to listen to this conversation. I'm going to try and say something open and vulnerable and honest. And some people are going to tell me that like, you know, I'm an idiot and flame me, but some people are going to say, thank you for saying that. And I'm going to let myself invest in them saying, thank you for saying that. I'm going to see there the potential for connection and pour into that.
That requires a great deal of optimism, because I think if you're going to do that, you're signing up for just a world of pain that gets packed in with, you know, the few people who acknowledge the goodness in all of that. And not everyone's cut out for that, nor should they be. Like, why subject yourself to...
And by the way, not everything should be a conversation, right? Like when I say to my kids, like, let's talk about your room. I'm not really looking for a conversation about their room. I'm trying to be polite and telling them they got to go clean up their room. It's fine to like recognize when we don't want to have a conversation, when we just want to like shout and scream, or we just want to listen to other people scream, or say like, you're just not worth the time. The key is that when we do want to have a conversation, to know how to do it, right? To know that there's these three types of conversations, that if I ask deep questions, it'll help. If you're vulnerable, I need to reciprocate that vulnerability somehow. I need to show you that I've heard what you said. I need to prove that I'm listening.
Well, on the subject of managing and navigating difficult conversations, let's just use a very practical example. It's Thanksgiving dinner. You're there with the family and the crazy uncle and the whole pastiche of opinions.
Yeah.
Historically, these dinners have not gone well. They go off the rails, politics comes up, whatever it is, right? And it devolves into acrimony and shouting, et cetera. Walk me through a strategy to have a different kind of experience.
Can we role play it a little bit? Like, so
Sure.
you're the crazy uncle. You just told me something totally crazy, right? Like either that you think, you know, all the Democrats should be locked up and thrown into jail, lizard people rule the world, something like that. It'd be super easy for me to say like, that's ridiculous, right? It'd be super easy for me to try and give you evidence. But what if I said to you, you know, can you tell me why does that seem important to you? What is it about that is either scary to you or hopeful?
Which opinion are we taking here?
Whichever one you want. You get to dealer's choice. Or let's do it this way. What do you think is something we disagree on? Oh, I eat meat. You believe very deeply in a plant-based diet.
Okay.
So I could tell you why I eat meat. Like I can tell you I believe in the protein and like, or I could say like, it seems like the moment you decided to stop eating meat, when you look back at it, what does that moment mean to you?
That moment, in retrospect, was a very important decision that in ways I couldn't predict at the time would completely change the trajectory of my life. But it was a decision that was made at the time out of a concern for my own health, and on some level was motivated by vanity. It wasn't some kind of altruistic idea that it was the better way to go. Over time, it became something else different. But I think it was something that I see now as a kind of symbolic dividing line that set in motion a journey towards understanding health, for individuals, but also planetarily, to having a greater sensitivity around ethics and morality. And it's a decision that has kind of shaped a worldview that that now I feel that I feel very strongly about.
You just told me so much about yourself, right? And like, you told me so much about how you see the world and how you see yourself and what's important to you. And let's say this was the conversation over the Thanksgiving meal. If I asked you that and you answered that way, and if I said in response, like, and this is actually true, this is what I would say, is the thing that's hard for me is I agree with everything you just said. Like, I actually wish I didn't have this craving to eat meat. And it actually feels like a moral failing to me sometimes. My wife was vegetarian.
Yeah, and you're the habit guy.
I'm the habit guy. I'm the habit guy. I'm supposed to be able to do anything. And like, there's all these things I struggle with. I struggle with getting myself to exercise. I struggle with eating more healthily because like there are times when I'm just like, I just want a hamburger. Like now we're having a conversation not about like what we disagree about. We're having a conversation about the fact that we both feel something similar. We both feel like we want to change and sometimes we struggle with change.
And I would mirror back to you in a good faith gesture of trying to better understand. After I do the repeat back and all of that, I would say to you, I understand those compulsions around food and how they can be used to ameliorate or treat difficult emotions, or how they are part and parcel of their own habit loops, et cetera. And I think one of the reasons why initially going entirely plant-based worked for me and helped me interrupt those habit loops and build different habits and break the cycle of craving is because they're so binary.
Yeah.
And that for me is not unrelated to recovery, which is also binary. Either you're drinking or using or you're not. There is no gray area. It's very black and white.
Yeah.
And if you apply that template to food, you can say, well, these foods are just off the table. I don't do that in the same way that I don't drink. And my lizard brain could kind of understand that. And it removed a lot of the decision fatigue around it.
Yeah.
To just say, well, that's off the table.
So this is a real conversation, right? Like we are having a real dialogue. And let's say you were having this with your uncle at the Thanksgiving table. And let's say it's not plant versus meat, but it's, I think Trump is the greatest thing on earth, or I think Trump should be put in prison. You're not going to change his mind just by disagreeing with him. But if you ask him that question, like tell me why this is important for you. Like, we could be talking about anything, but this clearly matters to you a lot. Tell me why. That's a deep question. It's an easy question to ask, but a deep question. And what they're going to say is they're going to tell you who they are. They're going to tell you what matters to them. And then the next key is not to attack them for being vulnerable, right? Don't say like, well, of course it's important to you because you're a fascist, right? But rather to say like, to prove to them that you've heard them. Say like, I understand that this is important to you because this is what you just told me, and let me know if I'm getting that wrong. Let me tell you like why it's important to me. Because it's for very similar reasons, and we see them a little bit differently, but we both care about the security of this country, or we care about the security of our neighbors. That's a better conversation. That does not mean we're going to walk away having convinced each other. I'm still going to go vote for my guy. You're going to vote for your guy. But the goal of a conversation is not to win. It's not to convince the other person. It's simply to understand what they're trying to tell you.